Hi, friends, and welcome to the Call to Farms podcast. I am your host, Tim Ing, the homesteading agent, and you're going to notice that I'm missing my better half, Sophie, as she and our eldest daughter is on an end of year school field trip. This is something that was much anticipated, and they're very excited to go on it. Sophie is chaperoning a lot of children as well, so I am wishing her luck. I wish I could be with you, babe. But that is why I'm doing the solo cast this evening. And today is Memorial Day. But before I get to that, I do want to talk about our family just got back this past week. And I know we touched upon it a little bit on that very last episode. We spoke as a family, at the Prairie Roots Homesteading Summit in North Dakota. That afforded us the opportunity to do some exploring. We like to combine a little work and vacation together. And we did a lot of driving in South Dakota as well as in North Dakota, explored national parks, President Theodore Roosevelt National Park, as well as the Badlands and Mount Rushmore. And all of it was just so awe-inspiring. It's been one of those trips where you come home tired, grateful, but extremely hopeful and optimistic for where our country is heading. Because despite all the challenges, all the bad news that we hear on a day-to-day basis, spending time, one-on-one time with other homesteading families and getting to know them really provides a lot of hope and optimism and making us feel like we're not so isolated with what is going on in the world. And now reflecting back on Memorial Day, as a West Point grad and serving in the Army, Memorial Day has always meant something a little more different. I always think about my grandfather who served in World War II, where English was a second language for him. He immigrated to the US, got drafted to serve in World War II, and I truly regret never learning to speak Cantonese, his native language. So I never heard his war stories, and I never learned about how, from his mouth, how our family immigrated from China to the US. Something that I truly regret. I wonder, does anyone out there regret never being able to get these stories from their grandparents or from their parents? And it wasn't until I attended West Point and studied World War II and brought in a picture of all the campaign medals that my grandfather earned that I even learned that he was in Normandy because his unit was there. How I wish I could go back and find out what other things he did because he was such a quiet and reserved man, very serious, always meant business. And I always wanted to make him proud. This is one of the reasons why I went to West Point. It's during Memorial Day that I think back on my friend Tom Karras, a truly interesting and remarkable individual whom I met, a friend first, and then a client second. I met him in California at the local American Legion. And it wasn't until we got all dressed up for a dinner, a formal dinner, that I saw all the ribbons that he had and the medals. And he's an infantryman who served in Vietnam. And I saw that he had, a limp too, because he has a prosthetic leg. But I saw that he earned a medal, a Distinguished Flying Cross. And he was an infantryman. And I had to ask him, I said, how did you even earn this medal, this award, which is typically given the pilots, as an infantryman? And he proceeded to tell me the story that he was in combat. Him and his men were flying into a hot LZ and the pilots got shot. And he had to take over the controls to land the helicopter and thereby saving not only his life, but everyone who was on board. What a heroic thing. And when I asked him, like, oh my gosh, you are a hero. And he's like, no, I just did what anyone else would have done. I knew instinctually at that moment what he was saying. I totally relate to that because that's something that is instilled upon us when we serve, that your own health and welfare and well-being is disregarded in combat because in the heat of the moment, you're just thinking about your brother and your sister to your left and right and helping to bring everybody home. So his answer didn't surprise me at all, but just how humble he was and how reserved he was too. He didn't really want to talk about it, but he shared it with me because he trusted me as a friend. And his story lives on. Tom passed away last year, but I just think about him and just what a truly remarkable individual he is. For people like him who served and paid the ultimate price to protect our freedoms, I think about 19 of my classmates at West Point who have passed away since we graduated in 2005. Many of them passed away in combat-related injuries, but a good majority of them passed away from self-inflicted wounds. This is something that needs to be talked about more. Mental health. It is a real thing and something that I truly take seriously. When I was still in the Army and teaching these mandatory classes, where often people would think you're just checking off the box to say that we've gone over this type of class, I took it seriously because I would share personal stories because I don't want any of this to be repeated over and over again. These stories need to be shared. And not only that, the men and women who gave their lives need to be remembered, but not only just their life, but the reason why they served, why they gave their lives to protect the freedoms and liberties that our country represents. And what's interesting about all of this and how it ties in together with what I just experienced is that these themes kept showing up the past week when we were in North Dakota on our trip, just speaking to families. We had the opportunity to speak alongside with Justin and Rebecca Rhodes, and both of us said the same thing to everyone out there when we were speaking is that, I mean, man, we felt like we were roughing it in Tennessee and in North Carolina, but in North Dakota, where the temperatures are to the extreme and the growing seasons are so short from now until I believe October, like 5 months growing. The people who are homesteading up there are something else. They are very hardy. They are super resilient. And I have nothing but the deepest respect for them. It was on that trip that not only did my family and I enjoy the beauty of the national parks and just soaking it all in, but learning about President Theodore Roosevelt and the works that he went to conserve and develop the national park system to preserve the environments for the animals and to be good land stewards. He was leading by example. And in standing there and looking out, I was reminded that America has always been about good people doing great things every single day. And not for accolades, but because it was the right thing to do. It was their duty, their responsibility. I compare this to what I learned at West Point about integrity. And the definition of integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking. Well, the same thing applies to here in America. People are doing the right thing every single day, going unnoticed because it is the right thing to do. And that's what is making our country so great. It's the farmers, the ranchers, the entrepreneurs, small business owners, tradesmen, military families, the volunteer firefighters. I mean, this is just to name a few of the career professions, but these are the people who are doing it every single day. And what encouraged me the most is not just the absolute stunning scenery. It wasn't the national parks. It wasn't taking the selfies that we got with the majestic bison. It was the people. It was hearing the different stories, the unique stories from the people that we encountered at this conference. That's something that I truly love. As a homesteading agent, I get calls every single week from people all across the country, and they're looking to homestead in different states. And I always ask them, what is encouraging you? What is motivating you to answer the call to farms? Why now? And then hearing their responses, there are so many stories that need to be shared, so many stories that need to be told. And it's all very inspiring. It's all very encouraging. The Prairie Roots Conference brought hundreds of families from across the country. A lot of it was more regional based, but across the country together. Families had tended together. There were homeschoolers, entrepreneurs, gardeners. There were livestock producers. And I saw that parents were intentionally teaching their children skills. There were small children just raising their hands and asking us questions. It was really hopeful to see that. Our daughters were on stage sharing about their Joy and Jolie business and what they did over the course of several years and building it out and being able to share their passions and now sharing their pottery skills. And all of this not to just earn money, but to build lasting skills, to share what they've learned to others, and to live a more resilient lifestyle. But going to this conference and seeing that others are yearning this or they are already doing something like this is very encouraging. And this is why I'm optimistic, because it's not until you go and meet these people face to face and have conversations when you realize that there are so many good families out there that are quietly building amazing things. They're starting businesses, they're raising children intentionally, growing food, homeschooling, learning trades, and creating community. That these are not the loud people that you'll just see on social media. They're not the people that are just getting all this attention. These are the people that are building a future. And that's exactly what Sophie and I want to do. We want to build a lasting legacy. This is the reason why we left California. We didn't leave California to escape or run away from something, from the governor, from the rules. No, we were running towards our dreams. And our dream, and it still is to this day, is to build resilient children, but to leave a lasting legacy for our children and our children's children. We desire more family time, land stewardship. We wanted to produce our own foods. We want to be able to touch and see our own food. We've come a long way. And if you've heard our stories, like I didn't even know what a live chicken looked like 9 years ago, to now being able to harvest our own meat birds, harvest our own lamb, have beef and dairy cattle in Tennessee is truly amazing because we've said yes to these opportunities. We want to instill upon our children entrepreneurship. And coming from Silicon Valley, you would think that's entrepreneurship is all around you. Start up your own app, start up your own companies. No, not necessarily. It's not just in tech, but actually building with your own hands, learning new skills that may not be comfortable in different genres, and being able to adapt to the changing environment, to the changing economy, so that teaching our children to not just master one skill, but to be familiar with a breadth of different skill sets to make them more resilient proof. And we desired community, something that we lacked in California. This is what we sought out. We knew we couldn't buy everything. We knew we couldn't grow everything. And I really yearned that camaraderie from the military where my brothers and sisters had my back and I had theirs. This is what we desired in building community in Tennessee. And it was through these actions that we did find the community and we built this life, and we're continuing to constantly build upon it, that we want to be able to share that with those who are desiring homestead living, who do not already have this community, which is why we created an online community so that you can be surrounded by like-minded individuals who will be able to be more open to share their own experiences. And we started it with this podcast because this podcast originally was to document our journey, but is now meant to inspire others to take the very next step, which is why we interview subject matter experts, because Sophie and I are not subject matter experts by any means, but we are a step or two or three ahead of where you're at right now. And we want to be able to share our experiences, share the obstacles, the challenges that we faced and how we overcame them so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. We want you to be able to get there faster, to live a life worth living. Why wait to retire at 62, at 65 years old and work your whole life to get to this magical number? To do what? When you can start living that life today, start incorporating, start implementing some of these things, whether it's spending more family time, whether it's growing a small garden in your backyard, starting to exercise these freedoms that our brave men and women who served and protected us and gave their lives for. This is what Memorial Day is all about. It's about honoring those who not only pay the ultimate sacrifice, but what we do with it now is how we honor them. What we do with those freedoms and those liberties. And that just goes hand in hand with homesteading. So the Call to Farms isn't really about just owning cows or having a lush garden or owning hundreds of acreage. Those things are all wonderful in itself, but it's not the point. It's all about stewardship. It's all about taking responsibility, building something meaningful that lasts, serving others and building communities, creating resilient families, and leaving things better than where you found them. And that's something that my parents taught me growing up is if I borrow something from someone, make sure I give it back in better condition than how I borrowed it. And that stuck with me. And that's something that can be applied with land stewardship. I'm speaking with you this evening and I'm wearing my shirt, Buy Dirt, Build Soil. You buy the land, but you build that soil up. You don't rob it of its rich and nutrient topsoil through plowing. You build up the life into it. You introduce microbes. You introduce fungi into the soil and you increase the life in it so that it produces nourishing food for you and your loved ones. We leave the land better than how we found it. This is what land stewardship is all about. I look forward to seeing all of you, if you can make it, to the Modern Homesteading Conference, which is going on next month in June 26th, 27th. I'll be speaking about how to find the right land to homestead on, as well as how to properly secure it as well. My family and I, this is our very favorite conference that we like to attend every single year. And it would be truly amazing to see each and every one of you out there. The link is below. It's not too late to get a ticket, and I'll see you there. Until next time, keep building.